Hey guys, Tony Rowe here, back with another Lee Chess classical game. And I'm going to mix it up slightly. I'll play 1g3, get this guy thinking. I'm playing Angel, or probably AngelM. 2402 provisional. I'll play bishop g2. If he goes e5, I'll probably go c4. And if he goes d5, I'll probably go knight f3. So in either case, I'm not letting black set up the usual duo here. Okay, so I'm going to go c4. Presumably he's going to go e5. This is an odd choice, but not bad. So now we've just transposed back to an English, most likely a 3 knights English after, yeah, e5, knight c3. On bishop b4, the usual move is knight d5, stopping bishop takes c3 and hitting the bishop on b4. And against bishop c5, I'll probably play e3. Okay. Knight d5, and I believe the usual move is bishop c5, but castling is very acceptable as well. I like to play setups here with e3 and knight e2, but it is possible to go knight f3 as well and just develop normally as like so. But when black puts the bishop on c5 especially, I like to go knight e2 and e3 and sort of blunt this bishop and get ready to kick it back a little bit with d4 at some point. One nice thing about e3 and knight e2, which is probably a little bit less relevant now that the bishop is on c5, is that white does not necessarily have to go d4. White can go f4 instead, which is interesting. I will pre-move this move. Not a particularly good move, I think, in this position, but I will pre-move it nonetheless. Hope everyone's having a good week. I hate Mondays. I hate that I have to have a job, but, you know, you got to pay the bills. YouTube is not paying the bills. I don't have ads enabled, nor if I did, could I survive on the $3 a month I would make off the ads. Okay, I will go knight e2. And I will pre-move. So he takes d5 again. That move is a little bit more logical. I'll go castles. Bishop e6 is a well-known blunder here. I could go d4, and whether or not he captures on d4, I'll recapture with the e-pawn in that case, but if he... I was referring specifically to bishop e6, d4, and let's just say bishop b6. I could play knight takes f6 check, queen takes f6, and then d5, hitting the knight on c6 and the bishop on e6. Well, I have the two bishops. Hooray for that. I don't know, something about bishop g4 strikes me as a little weird. I mean, not bad, but I don't necessarily agree with just giving up the bishops for nothing like that. I guess black could sort of contend that for now he's stopped d4, but I'm not super concerned about that at the moment. I think I'm just going to go b3, bishop b2. Now that my pawn is on d2 and e3, it's a little bit harder to get my bishop out in this traditional way, so I'm going to play bishop b2. Possibly looking to go back to the d4 plan at some point, or maybe a3 and b4. That would be sort of the usual ways to go here. So I'm going to do that. I guess black can play a4 here. Yeah. I guess probably I go bishop b2 anyway. I can meet a3 with bishop c3. I'm not particularly worried about that. And of course I would welcome... I think I should welcome a takes b3, a takes b3, but... Which one do you think is a higher probability, knight takes d5 or a takes b3? Okay, not relevant anymore. Neither is. So what do we play here? Well, a3 and b4 is essentially out because a3, a takes b3, of course. So, and b4 right away is not good. I could go bishop c3. It seems a little bit artificial. And d4 is now kind of out as well. And by kind of out, I mean it's impossible here, but yeah, I mean, because of this, so d4, of course. Even if I, like, let's say played rook d1, I still wouldn't be able to play d4 because e takes d4 I can't take back. I also I need to think about the fact that at any given moment, black could change the structure with knight takes d5. So I have to be at least a little bit cognizant of that fact ahead of time. So if I played something like, I don't know, rook d1 or whatever, maybe knight d5, I'd rather not have my knight on the d file. I don't know. I just have to keep in mind that knight takes d5 is an idea. So what do I do here? Queen d1, getting ready for d4. In this position, I'm not even super sure I want to play d4 anymore. I don't know, like, if I had two moves, queen d1 and d4, he could just play knight takes d5. Maybe you can't. That would lose a piece. Maybe d4 is an idea. I don't know. f4 is an idea. That's interesting. f4 kind of looks enticing, actually. Now that d4 is sort of out of the game, and also f4, e takes f4, I can probably flick in this check and wreck his pawns, because e takes f4 uncovers the bishop also. That would be nice. So if f4, knight takes d5, c takes d5, knight e7, that loses a pawn probably. Yeah, probably loses a pawn. f4, knight takes d5, c takes d5, knight e7, f takes e5, d takes e5, bishop takes d5, e5, knight takes d5, discovering an attack on my bishop. Probably, maybe even just bishop takes g7 is possible there. But I would assume just even retreating the bishop to c3 or b2 would be better for white as well. Just I have a massive bishop here. And the two bishops, in fact. So that would be more than welcome. And I also have a threat after f4, so I'm threatening to take here, and if queen takes, then f takes e5 would win a pawn, because I would discover an attack on his queen, and he can't get out of the way and take the pawn at the same time. So if f4, presumably e4, I mean, I would just wreck his pawns. Kind of feels like I have a reasonable initiative after f4. I'm going to play this. This looks promising. Honestly, even after e takes f4, I could even consider just rook takes f4, because knight takes d5, bishop takes d5 hits f7, because my rook is now on f4. f6 would be impossible to protect it there, so he'd have to play something like rook f8. And then maybe queen g4 is strong there. So I could even consider e takes f4, rook takes f4. That would be interesting. Knight takes d5. See, now I'm starting to think maybe I want to take this way. But if I take that way, maybe he can close the game down with e4. But bishop takes d5, e4, queen g4 then. And again, he can't go f6. Can he? How does he protect g7? Oh, just g6. That looks kind of scary, though. I mean, g6, f5, knight e7, probably f takes g6, knight takes d5. This is, yeah, that's a blowout. But he can take back on g6 because his knight protects against the threat of queen g6. C takes d5, knight b4, or c takes d5, knight e7. I think c takes d5, knight e7 is just good for white. I would be happy with that position, so... maybe takes. What next? Queen h5, perhaps? Hitting e5 and f7. So f4, knight takes d5. Both moves look fully satisfactory to me. I'm just trying to, like, decide if one move is better than the other move. C takes d5 is more forceful, but then I completely limit the scope of this bishop for the rest of the game, which I'm a little bit less than excited about. But in a lot of English positions, c takes d5 is the way you capture. Opening up the c file, getting an extra center pawn, gaining a tempo on this knight, etc. So if c takes d5, knight b4, f takes e5, f takes e5. I was thinking queen h5. Maybe just g6 there is fine, and then black is ready for f5, actually. I don't know. Bishop takes d5 is looking more and more enticing. If bishop d5, knight b4, I guess I can just take this, right? I don't have to be too flashy. Chess is hard. Okay, I'm gonna play this. I'm gonna give this a whirl. This feels like it's a little bit unthematic somehow, but it feels good here. Probably it feels a little bit better here than in other positions because I have some pressure on f7 where normally I wouldn't, and also black is missing his light squared bishop, so this bishop is maybe uncontested on these light squares, feels a little bit more powerful than it usually would. Normally you take with the c-pawn, but in this case I'm going to give this a whirl. My king is a little bit shaky here. I do have to be a little bit cognizant of that. F takes e5. I think d takes e5 is forced. If knight takes e5, then d4. That seems to win a piece. Takes. What do I have there? Probably rook f7 does not work. Maybe it works, actually. So if takes, rook f7, rook f7, rook f1. What does he do about that? I mean, he can give up the queen for 2 pieces. That's a definite possibility. Maybe since I sacked a rook in the first place, that's a fully acceptable way to play. Rook f7, rook f7, rook f1, queen e7, rook takes f7, queen takes f7, bishop takes f7, king takes f7. Maybe queen h5 wins another pawn. King g8, bishop takes e5. Maybe g6. But then... Okay, I'm just going to take... I mean, this is a natural move in and of itself. I'm happy to trade my f-pawn for the d-pawn and open up the f-file in this pressure. So if he takes on e5, then I'll consider whether or not rook takes f7 works. But it does appear to work. So I'm going to play that if we get that far. I just got back from dinner. Every Monday night, one of my friends, I have a group of friends that gets together for dinner, and one person cooks for the other 5 people, which is fun, except when it's your turn, you have to cook for 5 people and buy food for 5 people. But no, it's a good time, and it's a good way to get together with your friends. I would encourage it if you have a group of friends that likes to cook. It's pretty fun. We've started this thing where we have an ice cream showdown where Ooh, fancy. So bishop, I mean, it's a weird move to flick in. Maybe he's just trying to make me think a long time. Okay, well, I'm just going to play bishop b4. Keep everything else the same. Yeah, we've been having this thing where the person who's cooking for dessert buys two different, you know, small, what is it, pints of ice cream? Yeah, not quart, pint of ice cream, and everyone tastes both, and then we vote on it, and we have like a March Madness style bracket of favorite ice cream flavors. The problem, we've run into a problem though where we've been going so long. We've been doing this for like a decade, maybe more than a decade, but we ran into the problem last time we did this bracket that we had a bunch of seasonal flavors, and like the tournament lasted so long that by the time we needed to go to the second round, we did not have, like, we couldn't get the seasonal flavors. Like, we had like campfire s'mores in the bracket and, you know, like Christmassy flavors, and it was like summertime and we just couldn't buy them anymore. So I'm going to flag, and then like there's going to be 19 comments about how I was talking about ice cream instead of chess, but whatever. So now with rook f7, what happens? Rook f7, pretty much forced. Rook f1. Knight e5, I'm just taking it. This is a weird game. This guy's provisional 2400. I guess his blitz rating is provisional 1900, so. I feel like rook f7 is just winning, but like with this guy's rating, I'm like treading very cautiously because I don't want to like make some horrific blunder and then. But okay, this just seems good. We're gonna uncork this one. And the thing about not taking back on e5 now is like the same combination like seems quite a bit better for me. Like the insertion of a3, bishop c3 doesn't really do anything to the combination, but the insertion of like f takes e5 and rook b8 clearly favors white. Or like not capturing and playing rook b8 instead seems like it really favors white, because now d4, like at the end of this combination, I can just like take on f7 2 times, play d4, and then, you know, black is getting totally crushed. That's one nice thing about like this English position in general is that white's pieces tend to kind of like hang out behind the pawns, and black's pieces tend to hang out in front of his pawns, and so like a lot of times white can sort of play a3, b4, d4, f4, gain a ton of space, and like black's pawns don't have or black's pieces don't have a lot of scope because you know, they're sitting behind the pawns. Like this bishop is not an effective bishop lined up against this e3 pawn. It just sits on c5 and it doesn't do that much. This just seems like curtains now. I mean, knight e5 effectively just lost a tempo because I could capture, so I guess he can play queen takes d5. Maybe I should have taken with the bishop. Yeah, that's kind of irritating. That was probably an inaccuracy. So the question is, after queen takes d5, do I play rook takes g7 check, king takes g7, c5, c takes d5, and give him the move, or do I just play c takes d5, king f7, and then I have a move to sort of do as I please? What? Ah, I guess I'm just up a pawn. Dang. I thought I was just like, I thought this was a total blowout. Oh, dear. Calculation. Queen g4, g6. Looks scary, that's for sure. Maybe if queen g4, he's going to go bishop f8. That makes more sense. I'm going to play queen g4 anyway. I don't have a ton of time, and this move just seems very natural. Improving the queen with a threat, trying to take advantage of his exposed king. All of my pieces are kind of in the vicinity, and you know, this rook and this bishop are not doing a hell of a lot here to save his king, so we'll give this a whirl. Maybe if bishop f8, I can sneak in some kind of cheesy queen e6 to queen g8 mate. Probably not. After bishop f8, I honestly might just play like something like queen d7. But opposite colored bishops might make that an irritating endgame to win. Probably I should not do that. Queen e6 does seem good. If queen e6, c6, I have rook d7. Threatening the queen and threatening this mate at the same time. I'm going to play that. I'm just getting in here. I'm also just threatening to take here. That's not insignificant. I could have also considered queen f5, I guess. Planning bishop to e4. I want to coax some weakness in black's king side, but I think queen e6 is sufficiently good. Ah. He does have that. I can play rook c7. Rook c7. Of course, queen takes c7. I have this mate, so he presumably will exchange, and then I'm up 2 pawns. I think we're gonna go with that. I don't see anything better. I can play queen f5, but somehow it feels like now that I've given him queen d6 for free, that queen e5 is kind of dumb. Yeah, this might turn out to be an error, but okay, we'll try it. The one thing I have going for me, okay, I mean, I have 2 pawns going for me, but another thing I have going for me is that my bishop and rook are very active, and his bishop and rook are very passive, and black still has some weaknesses for me to work on. So, yeah, it's 2 pawns and an opposite colored bishop's ending, but black has some weaknesses, and also his king is going to take a long time to get active. My pieces do a very good job of corralling his king, and so maybe I can just walk my king up to e4 kind of at will and not have to worry about it. I could even play rook c8, but I don't want to go into just a pure opposite colored bishop's ending yet. I don't think that's technically that great of an idea. I just have to make sure that I don't blunder like a rook or something, and yeah, I think I have reasonable chances to convert this. If he goes rook d8, probably I'll just go bishop d5. I don't want to declare where these pawns are going yet. The one thing about pushing d4 is even if I can do it, a lot of times this pawn will be so weak on d4 that I'll have to push it to d5, and then with all of these pawns on light squares, it's going to be very hard to get them mobilized. Like, these 2 pawns will be my extra 2 pawns, but because his dark squared bishop is very effective at controlling these squares, that would be irritating. Probably I will play d3, though. I don't have any big problems with playing that. Or do I just bite the bullet and go d4? I just went on a very long diatribe about how d4 is crap. Rook d7. I'm gonna go rook d7. I don't necessarily want to budge this pawn. The only reason I don't play something like d3 is that I think after rook f8 check, I might want to go king e2 to d3 to e4, and if I play d3 and he plays rook f8 check, I go king e2, let's say, I don't have any way to get to this e4 square anymore, so I'm gonna wait on that. God, I only have 34 seconds. Jeez. In general, I've found that a lot of times it's useful to keep if you can, to keep some of your pawns like on the color of your opponent's bishop. Obviously, they can be attacked on those squares, but they also restrict the bishop on those squares in these opposite colored bishop endings. And a lot of times, I don't know if we'll get this far or if we'll get to see it, but the correct way to push these pawns is to always try and keep them either next to each other or on the same squares as your opponent's bishop. But maybe I can illustrate that more clearly. That might make zero sense right now, but I can illustrate that a little bit more clearly in a second. One thing is something like rook e8, I don't actually even have to move my bishop. Yeah, because if here, then I just have this check, so I think I might take the opportunity to play king f3 here, because it might be hard to play it if I don't play it now. Oh god, okay. I don't have any time. He can't play something like g6, and then of course I'll have to move my bishop, probably to the d5 square. If he plays g5, I'll play bishop f5 though. g6, bishop f7, rook f8, king e4, king g7. I can move this thing with check. That's not bad either. Yeah, I'm going to do that instead. I just want to get my king to e4, and this way I'm doing it with tempo. Ah, he can play... Shoot, he can play rook e7 and trade off the bishops. That might be annoying. But that might be okay, too. I mean... Yeah, that was dumb. That's going to go in the book as an inaccuracy because, yeah, now opposite colored bishops, even though I'm up 2 pawns, not as easy as it was a second ago. Probably if he goes king g7, I'll play, but then he can go king f6. I don't really want to go to this square because I want my king to go to this square, but I also don't want to just play bishop e6 and give him king f6. Bishop e2 for free either. If he goes king f6, I might just test him out with this move. Okay, he's not going to do that. So I'm giving myself inroads to his b pawn and his bishop now. King d5, he'll probably meet with bishop b4 and... Yeah, I do sort of wish this bishop was on a less dumb square, but that's okay. Okay, I'm going to go g4. If I go d4, he can take bishop g3, so I'm not going to do that. Maybe black should put his kingside pawns on dark squares so they don't get into trouble. Presumably he's going here. If he goes bishop b4, I will probably go d4 at this point. Maybe d3. But then d3 he goes bishop back to c5 and attacks this pawn. And I think in that case I'd rather have my pawn on d4. If he goes e4, I just head back with king d5 and he loses a third pawn. That would not be the way he wants to treat this position, presumably. He can do that. I should have taken on... no. If I take on b6, he takes on e3, my d pawn is pinned. That would have been kind of funny. I don't have much time, do I? Still up 2 pawns. Okay. God. I can't organize a good way to, like, isolate and take this pawn either. Like, I can't... I could fix his pawn on a light square, which would be nice, but also... He always has bishop f2, so... Maybe I have some way I can play, like, king f5. Okay, he's on my games. This is starting to look like a draw, but maybe I can make some progress somehow. I'd like to be able to go b4 and c5 and make 2 passers. Right now I only have 1, but I can't really... Like, if I can sort of trick him into giving me the b4 square for a second, maybe I can go b4 and c5 and get a second pass pawn. He's not hip to that idea. I'm reluctant to play e6 because then he gets all these dark squares to work with. So I need to come up with some kind of a plan. But I don't necessarily see one. I'm kind of just aimlessly shuffling here. He knows that it seems like he knows to keep b4 under wraps here. Yeah. King g5. Maybe I just have to go b4 at some point anyway and make the second passer. Yeah, maybe I'll just... Ah, okay, he's going to do that. Okay, well, I'll save that pawn with e6. I'm not super happy about this, though. Now c5 is not possible, of course, because it hangs a bishop. But he can go something like this. I'll be happy to take on e4 in that case. So he's not doing that. Okay. He is a little short on squares here. I wonder if that's relevant. Maybe I can put my king on f7 or something. Oh, I just hung the b4 pawn for nothing. Maybe in that case king f7 is... no, you can go king d8. Damn. Okay. Now this is just a draw. I mean, there's nothing here. After king d8. Yeah, he sees it. Probably even king c7. He doesn't have to do that, though. Yeah, he can just shuffle his bishop back and forth now. I'm going to offer him a draw. This is a draw. I'm not going to sit here for like hours trying to... Okay, he's just going to do what now? Not taking a draw down a pawn is pretty insulting. I don't know if he didn't see it or what, but that's kind of dumb. This is super fun. Does he know there's increment? Maybe he doesn't know there's increment. I'm a little perplexed by this, honestly. Does he, like, want to play out the threefold? Okay. It's just bizarre. Let's take a look at that one. Kind of irritating. All right. So we transpose to a normal English. Probably, if black played e5 here, which would be a normal move, I'd likely play c4, going into, you know, c4, e5, g3, which I'm happy to play. And if he goes d5, I was probably just playing knight f3. So, again, like knight f3, d5, g3, which is in my repertoire. And if c5, I would probably go c4, but I could also just go bishop g2 there. One funny line that Larson used to play is after e5, he would go knight f3 and go into a reverse Alekhine's defense after something like this, which is interesting. But the problem is that white's extra tempo g3 is not always like a useful move in Alekhine's defense. Like, there are some systems where black generally never goes for g6. For instance, I think like the chase variation is kind of interesting. Is it here or is it? It might not be here. Yeah, because now presumably I can take this, and this would be extremely ugly, so it wasn't here. I must be thinking of something else. Ah, c5 here, yes. And then after this, this. And now, yeah, I think a couple of moves I thought were good for black. Like knight c6, d5, bishop c5, all of these look very natural. And the problem is that in the chase variation, a lot of times, white would rather go for d3 and like e3 or c3 to support the knight, and somehow g3 doesn't really fit in with that. Oh, wow, that is depressing. One inaccuracy couldn't win the game. I wonder, just out of curiosity, I'm going to skip forward. What did it think the inaccuracy was? Bishop d5. Okay, that's weird. So at no time I was winning, or what the heck? I mean, well, okay, we'll take a look at it. Let's see what happened here. Well, I'm not sad. It seems like I played well. Not well enough. So bishop b4, knight d5, bishop c5 is theory. And I like to play e3, though I think in his book, Marin advocates knight f3. And there's some crazy lines here, like e4 is possible, and white has to go knight h4. And at a lot of times after d6, like g5 is a threat, trapping the knight, which is funny. But like there's all kinds of like crazy stuff here. Like castles is possible because after g5, I think d4 is a good move. Attacking this bishop and also threatening bishop takes g5 when this pin would be decisive, because with d6 in, black's bishop can't go back. So yeah, it's this kind of stuff is very sharp. But I like just going e3 and trying to play against essentially this bishop. Knight e2 or d4. I sort of jinxed myself. I said, like, it's rare to play f4 with this bishop on c5, and like 5 moves later I played f4 or something, but that's okay. I think all this is pretty usual stuff. And after castles, yeah, more normal here would be not developing the light squared bishop so soon. I did mention this is a blunder. Very thematic blunder. d4, bishop b6, knight takes f6, jack here, and then here. Is sort of adorable. I think some people try and get out of this somehow, but like taking on c4, but I forget how it goes. It's not relevant. More usual is something like a6 or a5, just making room for this bishop. But like a6 or a5 here. But I wonder, I've looked at these positions, a6, and I think I kind of liked b3 or not a3, maybe h3. I kind of like going b3. A lot of people go a3 in this position, which always struck me as sort of interesting. And the only reason I say that is that there are a lot of other lines. It's a useful move in and of itself, don't get me wrong. Like preparing b4 is a good idea generally, and in a lot of positions sometimes knight takes d5, c takes d5, knight b4 can be annoying because d3 is weak. But you can also make the argument that black played bishop b4 to c5 voluntarily without you having to go a3, and so to like play a3 later is kind of a little bit weird. For instance, like you can get very similar positions out of bishop c5 instead of bishop b4, and after e3, like castles, knight e2, d6, castles, and then like a6. And the only difference is that white has flicked in knight d5. And like a3 is the main move here. But like somehow I feel like white doesn't necessarily need that move, and like if he's not forced to make that move, then maybe he should not like waste the tempo on it. But I don't know. Maybe that's kind of like a weird like nebulous point. I don't know. But after something like a6, I like going b3, and then if black plays like another waiting move, I'll probably go bishop b2. Essentially, I'd like him to play bishop g4, so then h3 gains a tempo, and if he plays bishop e6, you know, like I like to sort of decide how I'm going to play based on where this light squared bishop plays. So I like to like play waiting moves before, kind of like useful developing moves before doing anything else. And I like to sort of tempt black to go bishop g4 because in general I think h3 is a useful move, and I don't think that bishop takes e2 is very good. and I'd be happy if he had to retreat to like f5 or e6 and have h3 for free. And one of the main themes of this system is that you can play against this light squared bishop with like g4 here or f4 first. And after f4, black runs into problems with like this bishop running out of squares. In this case, bishop d3 is possible. So some people like go d4 first, like this, and then d4 or whatever. But the theme is the same. Eventually, I'm going to go f4, f5. Yeah, I don't think this doesn't strike me as very good for black. I think giving up the light squared bishop is kind of a severe thing to do, especially when mine is so good. But yeah, I don't know. And yeah, I guess if a3, then a4. And a3 doesn't make much sense if like b4 is really hard to achieve, which here it seems like that. So b3 makes the most sense. I mean, like something like d3 or rook d1 doesn't seem fitting. I didn't see this sooner, but I suppose b3, bishop b2 makes f4 very natural, so I sort of forced myself into that plan a little bit, and then f4. Yeah, and around here it seemed like white was already a little bit better. It seemed like I had some initiative because, I mean, I have the two bishops and the center is opening up, but also black has like kind of concrete problems with the pressure on this knight and the pressure along the f-file and all that. And what does the computer recommend here? Knight d5 immediately. Okay, so that's what my opponent played. Knight d5, yeah, and then the big question was, even the computer can't decide. C takes d5 or bishop takes d5. I'm still not sure. C takes d5 is like very thematic. And after knight e7, I looked at this line. And I thought bishop g7, that was bad. I thought bishop g7 was probably just good for white. Ooh, knight e3, didn't see that. That's spicy. Yeah, too far into my calculation to see brilliant moves like that. I probably wouldn't see it if it was on board, so. The point is that like after rook e4, it's sort of impossible for white to avoid some kind of brutal discovery. That is slick. And I guess, yeah, I also mentioned bishop b2 here, but now that I look at it, bishop b2, a3 is annoying, or even bishop b2 and then knight e3 again. Presumably, like, this, well, maybe not. Why is that the case now? If rook e3... What am I doing there? Queen b5. Hitting the bishop and... yeah, because if rook b3, queen c5... Wow, that's crazy. I didn't see any of this. Yeah, this still seems good for white, though. I mean, I have three center pawns. Black has none after I take. I have the two bishops in an open position. f7's still a little bit loose. If I can sort of navigate all these tactical complications, which probably I can't. But this move seems very natural, too. I mean, my bishop is very strong here. There's not necessarily a great reason to block it in yet. And the pressure on f7 is irritating. Rook e7 is interesting. It seems quite a bit more natural for me to go rook f8, just because then knight e7 is still possible, and the queen is sort of free to kind of roam in these directions, and you keep your rooks connected. It just seems kind of weird to play rook e7. I mean, I saw this combination pretty much right away. Okay, yeah, and flicking in a3 was weird. Kind of a bizarre move. But, I mean, I guess it just doesn't... It doesn't really change anything one way or the other. It doesn't much matter. And I think if I looked at d takes e5, but rook f7 just seems crushing. And now here. So again, if he moves the king, though... Like, I sort of just forgot that moving the king and giving up the rook was possible, and I was only up a pawn. Why is this so crushing? I mean, I get that I'm up a pawn, and I have the two bishops, and my position is good, but plus 3.5 is a lot. I don't totally understand. Maybe if I follow the computer's line long enough, I'll, like, sort of get it. Ah, okay, so everything's falling apart after c5. c5 and then takes, and now all of my pieces are absolute monsters. And presumably I'm winning, like, you know, more material. Okay, I mean, I sort of get that. That's weird. I wouldn't evaluate this as, like, as crushing as the computer thinks it is. It does look pretty crushing, though. It looks pretty good. So that would be very similar to the game. It's weird to flick. It's weird that in this position exactly my opponent would play something as inconsequential as rook b8, but I guess he wanted to go knight b4 and not hang b7. But in lieu of this combination, this seems like just a worse version of the game. I guess I did have to give up my dark squared bishop, though. There is some validity to that I didn't really think about. So maybe rook b8 was actually sort of genius. Because when black takes with the pawn, eventually I was able to open up this bishop, and then my two bishops in concert were very strong, but with this variation, he forces me to trade off a bishop first. Yeah, I did look at queen f5. Somehow I felt like it just wasn't as strong as queen e6, but I did miss queen d6, which is, now that I sort of look at it, the most obvious move on the board. I looked at queen e6 really quickly, and I was like, okay, queen e7 is impossible, queen f6 is impossible, queen g7 can't be that good, and I was just like, all right, like, let's go with this. I didn't have a lot of time, but and I saw that queen e6, c6, rook d7 was winning instantly because of this threat, so yeah, I had nothing to play but rook c7, this cheap tactic that wins another pawn. But this was not winning. Opposite colored bishops ruining everything. E4 is cute. I didn't see that. That's funny. The point is that e4, king takes, rook takes check, and then the rook gets to go back. It's also funny that even after black wamboozles me and wins a piece, I have 3 pawns in my king, and these pawns are so active that I'm somehow still quite well placed. I don't know. Even maybe this endgame is like close to winning for white. I don't know. I mean, this looks extremely uncomfortable for black. Maybe this is better than what I played. I wonder if I can even trade rooks and try and win this. Probably not. King c6. Ah, yeah, he can start harassing my pawn, so I can't really do that. Huh, interesting. That's funny. Totally irrelevant, but interesting nonetheless. Yeah, and here I was able to exploit this cute fact that rook e6 is not possible because of the back rank to get my king to e4 before he can really stop me. Yeah, but here's the critical moment, essentially, where I think I probably forfeited all realistic. Well, not realistic, but I forfeited a lot of winning chances. I mean, it's funny. Stockfish does not rate this as an inaccuracy, but it rates bishop d5 as an inaccuracy, because I think for a human player, this is probably where most strong players would go, okay, here's where Tony Rowe, you know, screwed himself. This was definitely a mistake, I think. In time trouble, I just didn't even think about something like this, saving the... Yeah, it even hangs a pawn, but it's probably a better winning try still. Because I guess I have this, and he has to go to this crummy square to save it, and then I can maybe play something like this. And I have good pressure, but still, it would be hard to win this. Yeah, and after this, I think probably, even though I'm better, it's just not anything to write home about. Maybe I missed something here. I wasn't super excited about doing this. But yeah, now that I look at it, this makes a lot more sense, actually, though. The idea is that it's much easier. In the game, it was hard for me to, like, sort of get my passed pawns rolling in a logical fashion, and here I can play something like king b5, d4, b4, c5, and get my passed pawns rolling, and they're also connected, which is nice. I can kind of push them in concert, and with my king and bishop around, I can at least press here, I think. This would be a better option than what I played in the game. I just didn't want my pawns to get shattered. I mean, it's much more natural for a human to not allow him to like isolate this e-pawn, but I didn't really think about the transformation on the queen side all that much. Yeah. So that's kind of a miss. And here probably it's too easy of a draw because my passed pawns are now very easily blockaded. All of like this is immobilized simply by this bishop alone, and yeah, the king sits in front of the other one. So as long as he doesn't really do anything, I mean, I don't have much to really do here. I do wonder about, like, let's say, I wonder about if I can put my bishop here so all of these squares are covered and then play king c3 and b4. How does he react to that? So let's say bishop b4 here, he likes here. Ah, so he can put his bishop on c3, and if I go king d3, then I'm hanging this piece. If he were to go here, what about this? Maybe he can just go back. But then king d4, check here. What happens now? He can harass me from the other way. So if I go c5, but somehow I feel like I'm... Okay, it presumably doesn't even matter. If he goes here, then something like this. No, this has to be winning for white, right? So if here, bishop b2. That's... This looks like a better way to try and make progress, though. At least I've made pawns, and a3 is kind of loose. And I'm winning? Maybe it's not so easy, but also black does not have to really allow this. Opposite colored bishop endings are very difficult. Yeah, after this I have nothing. I mean, essentially he just puts his king on e7 and makes sure I can't play b4, or even if I get in b4 he can like attack it, or just make sure I don't get in c5 and protect this pawn, and there's, as we saw, I mean, there's nothing to do. I mean, he can even, no, he has to protect this thing. I kind of liked his bishop better on e1, to be honest, but I don't think it matters very much. And then I was an idiot, and I played king f5, which, I didn't play b5, or I didn't go back to g4 here, and so I just let him take on b4 for nothing, which, of course, forfeits all winning chances immediately. Yeah, and that's it. Then it's an easy draw. I just simply, as is usually the case in these opposite-colored bishops endings, it's very easy to blockade your opponent's pass pawn, 1 or 2 or even sometimes 3 pass pawns, because it's very hard for me to control these necessary squares to make progress. So it ended up in a draw. Kind of a bummer, because I feel like I really had something going. I like playing the English opening. This is a line I have a lot of experience with, actually. These structures in general, I think I play pretty well. I've played them a lot. I've analyzed them a lot. I actually started trying to compile some analysis for a chessable repertoire, and this was one of the lines that I already have some analysis on, and I've looked at it recently even, and I feel like I got a good position, and I played accurately. I found, some nice tactics here, and then somehow my opponent just weaseled his way out of a much, much worse position, so with a draw. Sometimes that happens, Listen, Anish Giri can't win winning positions. I shouldn't hold myself to winning positions all the time either. Sick burn. But his opponents are Caruana, and mine are AngelM. No diss on AngelM, but he's no Caruana, presumably, unless this is Caruana, in which case I apologize. And he should also feel bad for playing so bad against me. But overall, I'm not happy. It looks like I played pretty accurately. I'm not happy with how I played so much. Just I think at some crucial moments I did some pretty dumb things, like like some critical moments. For sure, I probably... Well, bishop takes d5 was a critical moment. I think I made the correct decision here. Maybe c takes d5 was equally as good. Hard to say. I think that, yeah, all through here I played well. Probably around here, maybe, like the next couple moves, I need to look for something a little bit more decisive. I would say, like in terms of inaccuracies, probably queen e6 was an inaccuracy, because after queen d6, maybe the best I have is rook c7, and that goes into an opposite colored bishop's ending, and then with the rooks on at least, and then I think probably rook takes e7 was the inaccuracy that like kind of ruined the game. I don't think that. Oh, that's sick. I didn't even look at this. So bishop d5 is an inaccuracy because bishop takes g6 is possible? That is gross. I really wish I found this, because king takes g6, king e5, and I have 4 pawns for the piece. Oh, that's awesome. I would have loved to have played this endgame and got it on camera. That would have been excellent. Okay, I have to analyze this for a second. I was about to like go into shut down the video mode, but now I want to look at this. This has to be close to winning for white, if not just outright winning. So we'll just play like against Stockfish's moves. Do I want to play e4 or go king d5 to b6, c6? Probably king d5 right now, because if I go e4, then maybe king e7 presumably is irritating, because now he can stop me from getting to c6. That's probably not a big deal, but getting into c6 seems good. So if here, g4, what if bishop f2? Now e4, king e7. Yeah, b4 makes the most sense to me. After c5, I'd like to take with the b pawn probably and just keep all of these dudes together as one unit. Yeah, this is totally winning. I mean, there's literally no way Black's going to be able to stop all 3 of these pawns, I think, with that bishop. Dang, that is so sick. This could have been like a Tony Rowe Brilliancy Prize. I would have been so pumped to play bishop takes g6. That is a shame. Oh, that's a sweet chess move. I even thought about, like, I didn't enunciate any of it, but I did think about at other points, like, I could give up a bishop now and be, like, pretty close to, like, you know, be at least equal, like, and be fine. I did not see this at all. Man, that's sick. I love piece for pawn sacrifices. If it seems like I'm really excited, it's because I really love playing piece versus pawn sacrifices. It's one of my favorite things in chess. I love, like, the triumph of central pawns. I think it's one reason why I really like to play flank openings, because a lot of times you get to, like, a small central majority that you can kind of turn into something else. Oh, man. All right. Well, that's okay. It's cool to analyze it. This was a cool game. Well played to my opponent. Very solid defense. Good defense. He exploited every stupid opportunity that I gave him and played pretty well. So even though the opening, I think, didn't go as planned for him, I think as usual, like my preparation and experience in some of these openings pays off pretty well. But you know, also as usual, like my technique is not perfect and time trouble. I still have a lot to learn. I still have a lot to work on. So. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. It is 10:24 Tony time. I think I'm going to go enjoy some Netflix, or I still have to work out and stretch a little bit, so I'll do that. Kind of hungry. I got a lot to do. All right, I'm rambling. Bye, guys.